How would you describe your work if engaging through architecture would be the key?
I think in that context we would probably describe our work as architecture that goes without saying. So kind of self-evident architecture. And then self-evident in two ways. In terms of the context in which it's being placed. So in terms of the size, the scale, the way you build up the spaces between the volumes. And on the other hand, in self-evident in terms of the program. And then the program seen, first of all, as a kind of software, a software that through time will get updates by itself, but could also completely change. And then the architecture is being considered to be the kind of hardware that has to somehow accommodate this software, which has to last over time.
Could one of you give an example to clarify these aspects?
As an example, we can use the building which houses our office and we are sitting at the moment. The project is called Piazza Céramique and was realized between 2001 and 2005 in the city of Maastricht. The original brief of the program of this assignment was to house 80 apartments, which each a working space and a car park for 120 cars. For us, the assignment had two interesting aspects. On one hand, it was the aspect of typology, how to design a complex which not only houses apartments but is also for business working spaces. On the other hand, it was the urban design challenge with the specific circumstances at this location. Initially, Jo Coenen, the urban designer of the Céramique, designed a building complex, a housing block for this area with an inside garden where pedestrians could walk through from north to south.
And in our opinion, the fact that actually the program had changed, because initially it was a housing block and now it was housing with working spaces or representational spaces. And what we did was to change the urban situation that was given to us in a way that it was not anymore a kind of perimeter block, but that we said actually what we should do is use the facades of the blocks next to us and then say we turn the whole thing inside so that our complex could not be a block but could actually be a kind of sculpture, you could call it, sculpture of three different blocks placed very precisely so you would get very nice spaces also to walk through. This would give us two things. One was that we would not be in second row anymore. And secondly, that the place itself would become its own address, since we were not located at the main boulevard of the whole project, but somehow in the second row. We tried to turn the place in being its own address.
What was the typological challenge?
The main challenge in terms of the typology has to do with that what you have to do is you have to combine living quarters with a kind of working quarters. And then the main problem in that is that just having a spare bedroom in a house doesn't turn that spare bedroom into a kind of workspace that has to be representational. You have to receive your clients there. So what we had to do was actually deal with this kind of Janus head of the typology, with on one side having the kind of private quarters you could call, the kind of place where you receive your guests, and on the other side the kind of working part in which you have to receive your client. And how to solve that problem, that was where the key was. The solution to it was that we had to come up with a typology that in a way did not really exist in the Netherlands. What you would have in the Netherlands in terms of spaces for dwelling and working, you could find in the the kind of liberal professions of lawyers, architects, doctors, and so on. But these were normally freestanding houses or houses in a row, so single-family houses and not apartments. If you would go to the southern countries, there you would find in Italy, in let's say Spain and so on, you would find apartment buildings that had both apartments and working spaces. So the trick was always actually you need to have an apartment with two doors. One door for your client and one door for your guests. So one for the private quarters and one for the what you could call the public quarters of the place.
So the central spaces work like a kind of hotel lobby?
Yeah, they work a little bit like a hotel lobby. At the same moment, what you get is that the residential quality is actually something you get extra. Because normally you would only have it for the working spaces that have to represent, but now also your own apartment has this kind of grandeur that you actually get for free. Next to that, the concept of turning the outward in also has a very specific quality for the apartments. So what we did was we used the concept of the loggia to turn the outside spaces, the private outside spaces in, and added to that an idea of the so-called folding blinds. And the folding blinds give the building a very kind of flexible character. Let's say both buildings look almost the same. So you get a very strange idea about the building. At the same moment, you get this kind of surprise that you constantly get different situations within the facade. As I said in the beginning, that also refers back to this idea of the hardware and the software that is being in. The software is talking about the life of the people at the inside.
Can you tell something about the construction or the infrastructure, the flexibility of the building?
One of the challenges is that we didn't want to make a monofunctional building, because the problem with monofunctional buildings is that as soon when the function of the building doesn't exist anymore, the building has no use. And we thought about it of making a building which could have more functions in it than only this apartment with an extra space for working. So normally the walls between two apartments is the load-bearing system. And in our case, we made the facade and the inner ring the load-bearing walls. So we generated a flexible space inside the building, so the walls between apartments can be changed. You can take them out and combine them. And it generated a process that we started with these 80 apartments with each working spaces. And we went from 80 to 127 apartments within the same volume. And even during the building stage, we changed the building again from 127 apartments back to 93 apartments, and 53 different kind of apartments are in this building.
And as they always say, the proof is in the pudding. So it's one of the reasons why we are here is we are what you could call the testers of our own building. But another very nice thing was that our client also asked us, prove it. So we had the so-called Dutch dancing days in a period, and one of the sponsors was our client. And he said, so prove it in your building. The building was not ready at that moment yet. So we had dancers within the apartments, dancers within the halls and so on, turning actually the building not into something where you could live and work, but almost turning it into a theater.